Hello everyone and welcome to the TOEFL writing video series. Today we are looking at the independent writing task 2 lesson regarding how to write an agree or disagree essay. Now you might be thinking that this essay is actually one of the easiest that you might come across on the independent writing task 2, and while it is very clear cut, I'm going to show you some examples, some tips and tricks about this essay, and then we're going to look at an outline and write a very interesting essay together. There are some things to keep in mind when it comes to this question type. I hope you're ready to get into the specifics. Let's get started. Now, when you are looking at this writing prompt, I want you to keep in mind two things. Here, you're going to read a statement of opinion, and then you'll need to answer whether you agree or disagree with the statement. I'll show you some examples in just a bit, but I just want to make it clear that this doesn't have to be your actual opinion. You'll need to provide specific reasons and examples to support your position, and if you find that it's easier to find reasons for disagreeing with the statement of opinion, you should definitely go that route, even if you find yourself agreeing on a personal level. Remember, you just want to pick the option that makes it easiest for you to find reasons and examples and write them in your 30-minute time frame. Now let's look at some examples here. Now the first example here, it says, do you agree or disagree with the following statement? All students should be required to study art and music in secondary school. Use specific reasons to support your answer. Now, you're usually going to see this first statement here. Do you agree or disagree with the following statement? This should be your best clue that you have to write an agree or disagree essay. The next option here, we see, do you agree or disagree with the following statement? High schools should allow students to study the courses that students want to study. Use specific reasons and examples to support your opinion. So you see that the first statement and the last are generally the same, and the statement that you have to look at will be right in the middle. Now this last example is what we are actually going to look at today. We're going to make an outline and write an essay answering this question. And it says, do you agree or disagree with the following statement? Children nowadays have too much freedom. Use specific reasons and examples to support your answer. Now, this is a great essay out of the 3 that we've just looked at. You have a couple of options here. The only way that you can wholeheartedly agree with this statement is if you believe they do indeed have too much freedom. If you disagree, you have 2 options. Now, you could argue that children nowadays have just enough freedom, or you could also say children nowadays don't have enough freedom. So the fact that we have this quantifier here when it comes to the quantity of freedom, this gives you some leeway and it gives you 2 possibilities for a disagreement. But remember, if you choose to agree with this statement, you'll have to agree with every detail in it. So that means you'd have to say that children nowadays indeed have too much freedom. So just keep that in mind when you see a statement that has something like too much or too many. You could think about whether it's enough, too little. And so these are definitely aspects that would affect your answer. So keep this in the back of your mind. We're going to come back to it in just a minute. Before we do that, I just want to take you through a writing guide, steps that you can follow when it comes to this question type. Step 1, you're obviously going to read your question and decide to agree or disagree. Remember what I said in the beginning? It doesn't have to be your personal opinion. What is easiest for you to write about should be the route that you choose to take. Step 2, you're going to develop your argument and make an outline. I'm going to show you how to do the outline in just a few seconds. And trust me, you might be thinking that making an outline is a bit too time consuming, but it will actually help you in the long run. And the more you practice, the less time it will take. And then lastly, of course, you are going to start writing your essay. Now, like I said, here is our lovely outline. You have 3 distinct parts, and it'll be 5 distinct paragraphs. So first off, you're going to start with your introduction. In the introduction, you're going to provide background information about the essay topic. And remember, this will come with your background knowledge and your own studies about society and cultural topics when you're studying for TOEFL. Remember, if you want to look at all of the details regarding the writing task 2 and the scoring and the timing, check out our video that talks about these general guidelines as well as all the question types. But just remember, when it comes to your introduction, you're going to call upon your knowledge of background information. So think about everything you know about children and how much freedom they have and society today. Then number 2, you're going to write a strong thesis statement. I'm going to show you how to do that in just a bit, but this will basically act as a roadmap for what you're going to talk about and argue in your essay. Then you're going to have body paragraphs A, B, and C. So this will be 3 distinct paragraphs, and they will all have the same 3 steps. That is, you want to include a transition word or phrase at the beginning in your first sentence. And your first sentence should actually be your topic sentence. It's a nice introduction for your paragraph. Then the rest of those sentences in your paragraph are going to be supporting sentences that basically just support and back up the argument that you're making, which has been introduced in your topic sentence. Then in your conclusion, you're going to have your last 5th paragraph, and of course, you're going to include a transition word or phrase at the beginning. You're also going to include a reinstatement of your thesis statement from the introduction, and make sure you do this in different words. You also want to show the examiner that you have a great range of synonyms, and then you're just going to provide a brief summary of your main ideas. This will also show whether you agree or disagree, and of course, your opinion. So now that we have some information about this question type and we've got our outline right here, let's start writing our outline and our essay. Okay, and again, we have the question that we'll be looking at right here. Remember, we have to make an argument for this statement right here. Children nowadays have too much freedom. So as you see here, I've got a lovely box table that will help us make an outline. So remember, for your outline, you don't have to have perfect grammar. You don't have to spell everything out or spell everything correctly, because no one will be looking at this. It's just there for you to follow as a roadmap as you write your essay. Now, again, you might think this is a bit lengthy, but trust me, the more that you do it, it'll become second nature, and you'll only really need to spend about a minute or 2 thinking about this, and then you will be good to go for writing your essay. This is exactly what we just looked at in the previous slide. I have just separated body paragraphs A, B, and C, so you see a total of 5 paragraphs. So let's start with the introductory paragraph. Remember, you need background information about the essay topic and a strong thesis statement. Now, for me, I find it easier to develop an argument if I disagree with this statement. Now, when it comes to this, I am going to say that we are in different times. So time continues and time evolves. And with that, there are also different opinions on this specific topic in society. So I'm just basically going to say that the general opinion on this statement has changed. And then I'm going to lead into my thesis statement. Now, again, I'm going to disagree, and let's talk about why. So I am basically going to say that there's not too much freedom. So there's a good amount. I'm not agreeing that there's too much freedom. And I'm also going to say that this freedom allows children to tackle responsibilities, foster creativity, and it also prepares them for adulthood. So this is all talking about the freedom. Now notice how I've separated this into 3 distinct parts. I find that this is a great way to stick to the logic and to the flow of your outline, because I've basically set up a topic for each of my body paragraphs. So body paragraph A is going to talk about how this will help children tackle responsibilities. Body paragraph B will be all about creativity. And then body paragraph C will talk about preparation for adulthood. So this way I know that I will not get off track when I'm writing, and I can always reference this for ideas. Okay, now for my first body paragraph, my body paragraph A, I am going to think about a transition word and phrase. This is actually optional, but it really helps me make sure that I've got all of my connectives in, and this is really important for your language. So I just want to make sure that I'm including as much advanced language as possible. So for that reason, I'm just going to write first off. This is just a reminder for me to make sure I'm using first, second, lastly, to sum up, just to showcase my knowledge of connectives. And so my topic sentence here is really just going to be about how freedom can help encourage the management of responsibilities. And you see I'm just abbreviating here just to make it quick and easier on myself. Now, my supporting sentences are going to be examples and explanations about how freedom can actually do this, because remember, I have to support my argument. So a couple of examples and explanations I'm going to use are this. I'm going to talk about hobbies and academic pursuits and extracurricular activities. I'm going to talk all about these extra things and all of these responsibilities. Then, as an example, I'm going to talk about a weekend adventure or weekend plans with friends. And I'll talk about how if a child has weekend plans or is given the freedom to do something, they will be more likely to meet deadlines. So sort of like an incentive. And then I'm just going to wrap up this idea when it comes time for me to wrap up the paragraph. Now we're going to do the same thing for body paragraph B. As my transition word, since it's the second main idea, I'm going to say secondly. And again, I am going to talk about fostering creativity. So my topic sentence is going to be something about creativity, and I am going to talk about social media and freedom of expression. This is a great segue into creativity. Then for my supporting sentences, my examples, and my explanations, I'm going to talk about creative skill sets. I will mention perhaps some ideas from social media outlets like photography, platforms, video networks, and basically artistic skills. And an example of this will be perhaps teenagers learning about artistic skills on social media. Lastly, I've got my body paragraph C. And so lastly, of course, is going to be a great transition word. So there we have it, so I don't forget. And then I'm going to talk about autonomy, because remember, we're talking about preparing children for adulthood. So I'm basically going to say that autonomy will help children succeed as adults. And for my supporting sentences, my examples, and my explanations, I'm going to talk about the standards in society that help children experiment with freedom. And as an example here, I'm going to talk about something I'm familiar with. So the United States, I'm going to talk about United States and driving and part-time work laws. And this usually happens when teenagers reach about 15 or 16 years old. So this is another example of freedom, responsibility, and preparing them for adulthood. My conclusion paragraph is going to be a little bit different when it comes to the outline, because I'm basically just going to reinstate my thesis statement and touch upon these in different words. So the best way for me to show you that is to actually do it as I use my synonyms, but I am going to write a transition word or phrase. I'm going to say to sum up. That's a nice way to conclude everything. And as a side note, I would suggest that you experiment with different transition words and phrases. Don't always use the same one. When you practice, it'll just make sure that you are comfortable and confident using a nice range of transition words. Okay, so there you have it. I did take some more time with you just to clearly talk about my supporting sentences and my ideas so that you could follow along. But in normal circumstances, if it's just you practicing, this should really just take you a minute or two after you've practiced the art of making an outline. Okay, so now we are going to start writing. I'm going to write it all out with you. I'll make some notes and I'll stop in certain places, but at the end of the essay, I'm going to clean it up for you with some color coding, looking at synonyms and connectives and other language. So at the very end, I will dissect it all with you so we can analyze it together. For now, I'm going to write it and follow this outline on the left-hand side. So remember, I'm going to start looking at number 1 for my ideas, and I'm going to say, just as society continues to evolve, opinions regarding childhood development have also changed over time. Remember, this is exactly what I was thinking about when I was talking about different time and different opinions. So that is my background information. I'm not going to stop there though. I'm going to include just one more sentence and give an example of this. So I'm going to say, for instance, some people believe that children have an overabundance of liberties in present-day society, while others reckon that adolescents have an adequate amount of freedom. Now, I've done this so that I can show the differences, those who agree and those who disagree with the statement. This is a nice rule of thumb, and it's a nice structure to follow for this specific question type. And then the fact that we have both sides of the argument gives me a great segue in order to talk about my stance. So then I'm just going to say, I myself agree with the latter. So that means that I agree with this part here. Others reckon that adolescents have an adequate amount of freedom. That is what I agree with. So basically, I'm showing that I disagree with the statement here. Then I'm going to finish off with my thesis statement. So I'm going to say, currently, children are given a healthy amount of freedom that encourages responsibility, fosters creativity, and prepares them for adulthood. So see how I really didn't change that much of my notes. I'm sort of looking at what sounds better, what I want to use in terms of synonyms when I'm actually writing, but the idea is all the same here. So that is the introductory paragraph. Let's start writing the body paragraph A. I have my transition word and phrase and my topic sentence ready. So I'm going to say, first off, allowing children to gain independence from an early age will likely encourage them to manage responsibilities more efficiently. Now I'm going to start with my supporting sentences. So I'm going to talk about hobbies. And with that, I'll say, with more freedom to choose hobbies, in addition to academic pursuits and extracurricular activities, adolescents can develop responsible habits. And that is my first supporting sentence. So with that, I'll say, for example, if a teenager is given the opportunity to spend the weekend with friends, he or she will be more apt to complete necessary assignments and meet deadlines beforehand. Thus, the mere fact that adolescents have freedom in their personal lives could help them successfully manage important responsibilities. And so you see right here, I have talked about everything in my notes and also an example here. And I've closed it quite nicely with another connective, and this sort of just wraps it up and closes the argument for body paragraph A. Now I'm going to look at body paragraph B. Remember, my transition word and phrase was secondly, and I've already got my topic sentence ready. I'll say secondly, the prevalence of social media platforms has provided the current generation of youths with an unprecedented freedom of expression. Thanks to the increasing ability To connect and communicate with a diverse set of peers, children can utilize these opportunities to further their creative skill sets. And that is exactly what I've talked about here for my social media, freedom of expression. Now I'm going to look at my example. So here I'll say, for instance, with the freedom to create social media profiles ranging from an online photography portfolio to a collaborative video network, teenagers can express themselves while potentially learning necessary artistic skills. And now again, I'm just going to wrap this up since I've talked about my example, I've given my topic sentence, and so I'll say, consequently, this positive creative license can create well-rounded, bright individuals with a plethora of interests. And we are done with the second example. Now our last body paragraph, so our body paragraph C, that's going to start with, lastly, introducing autonomy naturally to children will better prepare them for life as adults. As such, the standards in present-day society allow children to adequately experiment with appropriate amounts of independence. In some areas of the United States, for example, and now again I'm going to talk about my example, 15-year-olds are legally permitted to begin driving and work part-time in addition to attending school. It is important that young people experience these liberties firsthand, as they will be less likely to become overwhelmed with the pressures of adulthood in the long run. Now, I'm just going to clean this up a little bit so we have some more space to look at the conclusion. Okay, and our last transition word for the conclusion paragraph is going to be, to sum up, adolescents do not have an excessive amount of freedom, but rather have been given an appropriate amount that is on par with an ever-changing society. This is basically a brief summary of my ideas. It's also a nice way to reintroduce my thesis statement, which is, by instilling positive traits such as creativity and responsibility, this sense of liberty will also prepare children to become successful adults. So notice how in my reinstatement I have talked about creativity and responsibility and adulthood. And if I just scroll back up here, you see those are my 3 points. So we are done writing this essay. Now I am going to clean it up for you, have it all in one page, color code it, show you the word count, and let's analyze it together. All right, and here we are. Now this is our key. So our word count is 385 words. Now the minimum is going to be 300 words, but that is the minimum. And TOEFL states that these essays should have at least 300 words. So we've definitely fulfilled that, and we've gone over, which just shows our knowledge on the subject without writing too much. So you don't want to be at 400, but this is a good place to be. Now with our key, I want you to keep in mind that things in blue are the synonyms and topic vocabulary. So these are words that have to do with children, freedom, society, liberties. Then green is useful vocabulary and phrases. That is in general that you can use for other essays. And then in red, you'll find the important functional words. These just really help the flow of your essay and the logic when it comes to giving your examples and starting and finishing your paragraphs. So I'm just going to scroll down here. If you'd like to pause here, you can look at this and understand why I've color-coded a couple of things. You can make notes for this. This is the essay as a whole. Now I'm just going to briefly talk about the colors. So we talk about the blue, you'll see different words for childhood development, liberty is another way to say freedom, present day society is great for nowadays, adolescence, children, teenagers. These are also great ways to say children and youths, generation of youths, peers. Notice how I used different words to talk about children, and the writing prompt just said children. So you really want to make sure that you are showcasing your knowledge about the topics. So talking about academic pursuits as well, assignments, deadlines, extracurricular activities. I really took this anywhere. And this is where you can sort of fit your language into the essay and really make sure that it shines with great language. Now for green, this is really just grammar. I've started here with this sentence. I myself agree with the latter. Using reflexive is quite advanced, and the latter shows that you're talking about the second half of the preceding statement. Reckon is also another great way to say think or believe. Here I have more efficiently. It's nice to add your adverbs of manner as well as your adverbs of frequency, but your adverbs of manner are nice because it shows how responsibilities are being managed. I also have a conditional here, a first conditional. So if a teenager is given the opportunity, he or she will be. I also have the conditional here, just a conditional verb, could. And thanks to is great. It also serves as a connective, and ranging from to is a nice phrase that you can use when giving your examples. It really shows that you know what you're talking about because you're including two examples, but it sort of implies that you have others in your mind. Again, I have some adverbs of manner, adequately experiment. 15-year-olds, this is really interesting because I'm talking about 15-year-olds as a noun. Notice how I didn't say 15-year-old children. Now, in that case, you would still hyphenate it, but 15-year-olds with a hyphen is also fine. It's little details like this that will really show the examiner that you have a strong hold on your grammar. Also, on par with and ever-changing, nice compound adjective and a good phrase. Lastly, you've got your words in red and your phrases in red for instance or for example. Then I have currently, and also like we had in our outline here, first off, secondly, lastly, and to sum up. So note how my paragraphs begin with that. And then ways to give examples. Of course, we have the classic for example, but also as such, and then thus and consequently. These are great ways to finish your paragraphs. And then in addition to is also nice when talking about examples. And then to sum up is a great way to introduce your conclusion. And also, but rather is a great contradictory connective. So it shows here that I do not agree with this part of the phrase. Rather, I agree with the second half. So again, feel free to pause here and look through this. This is the final essay. Now let's wrap up the lesson. Now for our wrap up, I'd like to take you through some do's and don'ts. First off, with your do's, the first thing you need to do is analyze your writing prompt and understand what essay you have to write. Remember, do you agree or disagree with the following statement is generally how you will see the writing prompt. So when you see that, you should know that you'll have to agree or disagree. Then make sure you clearly choose a side. You want to either agree or disagree wholeheartedly and give your ideas. Then you want to organize your outline. It'll just take a few minutes. The more you do it, the easier it will become. And focus on your thesis statement. Let that guide you through your essay. And with that, you'll have to write at least 300 words. Now, things you don't want to do not start writing the essay immediately. Always focus on your outline and your thesis statement. Make sure that those are good to go before you start writing. Don't get confused about the prompt. Sometimes people just don't pay attention to that first sentence and they don't know that they have to write an agree or disagree, and they get flustered because there are a few different writing prompts out there. So just make sure that you are clear about what you have to write, and don't forget your synonyms and your topic vocabulary. This will really depend on all of the information you've studied up until this point, all of the relevant words and relevant topic vocabulary that you have. So don't forget it. Thanks for following along today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope that you have some tips and tricks and some great ideas for your next agree and disagree essay, especially when it comes to the outline and writing out your ideas. For more practice, you can visit us at www.bestmytest.com/TOEFL. There you'll find a lot of great writing prompts, extended practice, and other resources that you can use. Again, thank you for following along today, and I hope to see you for the next lesson.